Okay, live streaming is up as well as here on Zoom, so you should be good.
Is everybody ready? This is a 2-minute warning. Everybody ready to begin? All right, I hereby call this remote meeting of the Washington Metrorail Safety Commission to order. This meeting is being recorded as well as streamed live for the public. Mr. Smith, do we have a quorum today?
Because we are meeting remotely, I will call the roll to make sure we have quorum, that the minutes accurately reflect today's participants, and that we account for all alternates in the event any commissioner has connectivity issues or is not in attendance. An alternate will participate in the public meeting to reach a quorum if needed, and if one or both members from that jurisdiction are absent. When I call your name, please answer with present. Chair Hart.
Present.
Commissioner Bob. Commissioner Bob. Commissioner Farrar Dyke.
Present.
Commissioner Hall.
Present.
Commissioner Rush. Commissioner Al-Khatib.
Present.
Commissioner Rush, your presence.
Yeah, I was muted. Sorry about that.
Alternate Commissioner Lobby.
Present.
Are there any other commissioners or alternate commissioners with us this afternoon? I don't see anything. Chair Hart, we do have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. We will start today with our safety message from WMSC's Emergency Management Specialist, Richard David. Mr. David?
Thank you, Chair Hart. A few safety tips as we quickly approach winter. It's not too late to get your flu shot to help protect yourself and others. At home, check your heating appliances or fireplaces to assure that they're in proper running order. Clean your gutters and other areas where there may be buildups of ice and or leaves. Be mindful of black ice, leaves, snow, or other conditions that may cause you to slip while walking or driving. The WMSC wants you to enjoy your holiday safely. Stay informed, stay healthy, and stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. David. We will now move on to the minutes from our last meeting. Secretary Treasurer Farrar Dyke, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. The minutes were posted for your review of October 26, 2021 meeting. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes? If not, I move approval of the October 26 minutes as circulated. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Rush has seconded the motion. I will ask our counsel Brackett Smith to conduct the roll call vote.
Thank you, Commissioner. Chair Hart,
Approved.
Commissioner Farrar Dyke,
Approve.
Commissioner Hall,
Approve.
Commissioner Rush,
Approve.
Commissioner Al-Khatib. Sorry about that. The motion carries.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Smith. We will provide an opportunity for public comments on each of our meetings, and we will now ask if any members of the public who have joined our Zoom webinar would like to speak. If you would like to speak, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom, and our staff will unmute one person at a time. Each person will have a maximum of 2 minutes. I will pause now to see if we have any public comments. While we're waiting to see, I will also remind everyone, including those of you watching on YouTube, that you can always report any concerns through our website, wmsc.gov, through our social media channels like Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, or by email. Mr. Smith, do we have anyone who has indicated they would like to speak?
I am not seeing anyone, Chair Hart.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Smith. We will now continue with the next agenda item, which is my remarks. Our meeting today includes updates on WMSC's ongoing safety oversight activities, consideration of final safety event investigation reports, and consideration of Metrorail's agency safety plan. The WMSC is continuing our active involvement in the National Transportation Safety Board investigation into the October 12 derailment. The WMSC has also been working with Metrorail regarding Metro's plans to safely return the 7000 series rail cars to revenue service. The agency safety plan is an important document that specifies Metrorail's commitments to safety and to a safety management system, or SMS, approach. This approach requires a strong safety culture with clear commitments, responsibilities, procedures, training, and communication from frontline workers through the highest levels of management. The commissioners will also consider today the WMSC's independent financial audit. We are proud that this is again a clean audit, and I look forward to Secretary Treasurer Farrar Dyke sharing more with us later in this meeting. Dr. Meyer, do you have any opening remarks?
Thank you, Chair Hart. I do. First, an update on the derailment investigation and the 7000 series rail cars you mentioned. The NTSB is leading the accident investigation into the October 12th derailment, and we are continuing to work with them as a party to that investigation. Last week, the NTSB issued a preliminary accident report. As previously outlined, Train 407 had derailed at least 2 other times earlier in the day at other locations on the Blue Line. Both times, the train re-railed itself. At the time that it derailed for the final time on October 12th, after departing Roslyn Station, the train was moving approximately 33 miles per hour. The train derailed approximately 166 feet south of the station. The train continued for about 1,800 feet toward Arlington Cemetery Station before stopping in the tunnel. The train operator was not initially aware of the wheel set that derailed and initially reported that there was a stuck brake. The rail controller instructed the train operator to try to move the train. An examination of car 7200 after the derailment showed that both wheels had moved outward on the axle. This movement, including any movement after the derailment occurred, increased the gauge a total of 2 inches as measured after the derailment. Since the derailment, we have directed Metrorail to provide information on their back-to-back measurement failures that were identified prior to the derailment. Metrorail told us it identified 20 instances from last fall through the end of September of this year where the wheels on 7000 series rail cars were too far apart, and one such instance on a 6000 series car. This is in addition to 20 other cars that failed this check during special investigations that followed the derailment. During this investigation, Metrorail stated it knew of some back-to-back measurement failures on 7000 series cars dating back to 2017, information that had not been disclosed to us before. As you know, on October 17th, we issued an order requiring Metrorail to remove 7000 series cars from revenue service. In relation to other aspects of the investigation, the NTSB's preliminary report notes that the evacuation of customers on the derailed train began about 6:20 p.m., approximately an hour and a half after the train derailed. The evacuation was completed around 7:16 p.m. As you might imagine, we continue to devote significant time and efforts on this investigation, including on-site work at Metrorail and other facilities, ongoing interviews, and continuing data analysis. We expect the investigation will continue for many more months. With regard to our order, we continue to have frequent interactions with Metrorail staff regarding their 7000 series plans required by our order to return each rail car to revenue service. This has included consultations and data reviews conducted by our team and by Metrorail's teams, as well as discussions of Metro's specific plans required under our order. Metrorail provided us with additional information and documentation late Friday, and our team is working hard to carefully review this information, including Metrorail's analysis of testing data, so that we can provide any specific feedback to Metrorail this week. At the same time, our staff are continuing our work in other areas, including safety audits, inspections, investigations, and safety certification oversight. For example, last week, our team observed a tabletop emergency exercise as part of our regular monitoring of Metrorail's emergency preparedness. Separately, during our inspection work, our staff became aware of safety concerns with fire alarm systems, and we directed Metrorail to address these concerns immediately. Concerning our safety audits, our interviews are underway for our station maintenance, elevator, and escalator audit, and other audit teams are working on draft reports. Our audit work and other day-to-day interactions with Metrorail are a critical part of the proactive nature of our work to identify safety problems before a safety event occurs. Of course, it's up to Metrorail to propose and carry out the corrective action plans to address those safety deficiencies. The Wmsc provides specific feedback on each Metrorail corrective action plan proposal if revisions are required, and once approved, we oversee the implementation of those caps. Of course, we are also responsible for investigations when safety events do occur. For example, we are investigating a serious near miss last month that involved a train passing workers at more than 50 miles per hour between Tacoma and Fort Totten stations. The details of the event are being investigated, but a train should never pass workers this fast. We learned that track 1 in this area is designated as a hotspot requiring foul time, but track 2 was not designated as a hotspot. A Metrorail employee involved in this near miss on the Red Line reported that a similar event had occurred at the same location before. As further, more systemic corrective actions are developed, the Wmsc raised an urgent safety concern to Metrorail and required safety changes. The Wmsc requested Metrorail to implement immediate mitigations and to develop a permanent solution to address roadway worker protection in this area. Metrorail implemented a temporary order designating the track area on track 2 as a hotspot, requiring foul time protection to match the protection required on the opposite track at the same location. This temporary order is in effect while further analysis is conducted at this location. We will provide more information about the event at a future meeting when the investigation is complete. As you noted, Chair Hart, Metrorail's first revision to its Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan, or PTASP, is on the agenda for your consideration later in this meeting. Metrorail is required by the WMSC and the FTA to revise this plan at least annually, and the WMSC provides additional requirements as part of our program standard. In the big picture, an agency safety plan requires a comprehensive safety management approach that involves everyone in the organization in a proactive and data-driven approach to safety. This can take time to fully implement. However, having the plan in place is an important part of bringing SMS to Metrorail. WMSC staff provided detailed feedback to Metrorail concerning their proposed revisions for this year before the plan was presented to their board of directors for approval in late October. Following Metro Board adoption, Metrorail has provided the required documentation and approvals to us so that we can bring it before you today for consideration and approval. And finally, as you noted, Chair Hart, Secretary Treasurer for our Dyke and the Finance and Operations Committee are bringing forward our independent financial audit later in this meeting, and I'm very proud of our team for again achieving a clean audit from this, our second independent external financial review. This concludes my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Meyer. Are there any questions from the commissioners for Dr. Meyer?
Chair Hart, I have a question for Mr. Meyer.
Please, Commissioner Lobby.
I note that in your remarks that you talked about the near miss, another near miss at Tacoma and Fort Totten. And you know, we've been talking a lot about roadway worker protection as we've reviewed reports throughout the year. And I did a little math based on what we've covered this year, and I see that we have 25 roadway worker protection accident and incident reports that we've covered the past year out of 79, which is fully 1/3 of the total number of accident incident reports that the WMSC has reviewed. This seems to be a big problem that's going on, and as you said, you know, a road crew that's passed at 50 miles per hour, this is a very critical situation. Are we convinced that Washington Metro is taking these issues seriously and moving forward quickly to address these roadway worker protection type issues?
Well, thank you. I appreciate an opportunity to speak a little bit more about that, Commissioner Lobby. This is a matter of concern, of significant concern for me, roadway worker protection, and I'm confident that it's a matter of concern for our entire staff. We have spoken and continue to speak with Metrorail representatives about RWP, roadway worker protection issues, probably every week. And we have followed their activities to bring aboard staff to take charge of the roadway worker protection program and rewrite the roadway worker protection manual. We have been with them every step as they have increased their overnight inspection and checking activities to ensure or to verify construction sites and roadway worker protection. In part, that probably has led to some of the incidents being reported to us that may not have been otherwise, but that's not for an instant to minimize the concern. The concern is there and it's real. We have asked, excuse me, we have asked Metrorail safety representatives to brief us comprehensively on their plans to address these issues and to prepare new procedures. That briefing is scheduled for next week. And after that, the staff will consider any appropriate action that is going to be required to ensure that those activities remain on pace and bring us the change that I know that you and the other commissioners are looking for.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. That's good to hear. You know, I also feel that this is a critical issue, and I'm really looking for Washington Metro to make some immediate changes to improve the situation. And hopefully, in the near future, we're going to see a drop in the number of roadway worker incidents compared to what we've seen this past year.
Thank you, Commissioner Lobby, for raising the issue, and thank you, Dr. Meyer, for responding to it. But you're correct, Dr. Meyer, that we are all very concerned about it. In fact, several of the events we'll hear about today are more roadway worker protection issues. So we'll move on to those, but thank you, Commissioner Laube, for raising that. And thank you, Dr. Meyer, for bird dogging it, because it's been a problem for a long time. We need to do something about it. Next, we will move on to safety event investigations. We have 4 reports on our consent agenda today. Investigation Whiskey 0126 is a report related to an evacuation for life safety reasons on July 4th of this year. As this is considered an accident under our program standard and federal regulation, but the event was due to an intentional action of a group of riders, we have placed this on the consent agenda. We also have 3 other reports on our consent agenda today that have been previously discussed at a public meeting but were not adopted at that time. Investigation Whiskey 0070 involved duplicate train identification numbers that contributed to a red signal overrun in the area of the U Street station. Metrorail has added corrective actions since we were last briefed on this report. These include raising the importance of duplicate train ID alarms in the Rail Operations Control Center and working on scheduling software changes that will reduce the risk of duplicate train identification numbers. WMSC staff follows up on this regularly, including in the meetings over the last 2 weeks. Investigation Whiskey 0084 involved the improper evacuation of customers by Metro Transit Police without required safety equipment. Metrorail has continued corrective action since we were last briefed on this report, and WMSC staff have made significant progress on an audit of Metrorail's emergency preparedness and fire and life safety programs. Finally, Investigation Whiskey 0099 involved an improper roadway worker protection event at Tacoma Station. Metrorail provided additional information regarding the advanced mobile flagger who was not properly positioned on the platform. Does any commissioner have any questions about any of these reports? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to adopt all 4 of these reports: Whiskey 0070, 0084, 0099, and 0126.
Also move.
Commissioner Hull, thank you for the motion. Is there a second?
I second.
Commissioner Farrar-Dyke, thank you for the second. I will now ask our counsel, Brackett Smith, to conduct our recorded vote.
Chair Hart,
Approved.
Commissioner Bob,
Approved.
Commissioner Farrar-Dyke,
Approve.
Commissioner Hall,
Approve.
Commissioner Rush,
Approve.
Commissioner Al-Khatib.
Approve.
Chair Hart, the motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. We will now move on to investigation reports that are being presented today. Our first investigation report today relates to a collision on the Green Line earlier this year. Track and structures expert Jermaine Walker will present this report. Mr. Walker.
Thank you, Chair Hart. Investigation Whiskey 0127 relates to a runaway maintenance vehicle and collision near Southern Avenue Station on July 9th, 2021. The roadway maintenance machine, a prime mover, collided with a Geismar track talking machine after traveling about 250 feet downhill into an area where personnel were working. The prime mover remained on the rails. At the time of the event, the equipment operator was transitioning from the cab operating station to the remote operating station. The roadway worker in charge noticed the vehicle was rolling and entered the cab. The prime mover continued to roll after the activation of the emergency stop push button and after the battery disconnect switch was turned off. The equipment operator and the RIC on a prime mover yelled at the workers on the tracks to get out of the way. The workers cleared just before the vehicle reached their location. The prime mover collided with a Geismar track talking machine, then came to a stop. The collision damaged both pieces of equipment. A Geismar track talking machine is a heavy device used to loosen and tighten bolts for fasteners and screw spikes for rail ties. A track and structure supervisor reported the event to the Maintenance Operations Center and the Rail Operations Control Center approximately 11 minutes after the collision. MOC then reported it to the rail traffic controllers responsible for that section of the rail system, almost 20 minutes after the collision occurred. Post-event testing on the prime mover revealed a 15-second delay from the time the parking brake was initiated to the time the brake actually applied. Further inspections identified contaminant buildup in the exhaust valves. This led to those valves being stuck closed. Metrorail did not initially report this event with the appropriate classification and did not immediately correct this when notified by the WMSC. The event was later reported to the WMSC and FTA with the appropriate classification at the WMSC's direction. Following this investigation, Metrorail issued notices to personnel related to brake verification and testing during pre-trip inspections and prior to operating a prime mover. In addition, due to the WMSC's roadway maintenance machine audit issued earlier this year, Metrorail is required to revise equipment operator training and certification and maintenance rules, procedures, and training. Work on these corrective action plans is underway. Thank you. That completes this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Are there any questions from the commissioners?
Chair Hart, I have a couple of questions.
Yes, Commissioner Lobby, please.
The report said that they found a contaminant in the valve. Do we know what the contaminant was? Is it just dirt and dust or something specific?
You're absolutely correct, Commissioner Lobby, just dirt and dust from all indications that we've received from Metrorail.
And the existing maintenance requirements do they include examining this valve and cleaning it, or has that been left off the maintenance schedule?
After review of the procedures that we were provided, it is part of pre-trip inspection. It's also part of what maintenance does when the unit is in the shop, going under repairs or things like that nature.
So has it recently been added, or did it exist before?
It existed before.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner Lobby. Are there any questions from any of the other commissioners? All right, seeing none, is there a motion to adopt investigative report whiskey 0127?
So moved.
So move, Commissioner Bob. Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, I didn't see who that was from.
Al-Khatib.
Al-Khatib, Commissioner Al-Khatib, thank you very much. I will now ask Council Brackett Smith to conduct our recorded vote.
Chair Hart,
Approve.
Commissioner Bob, have we lost him? All right. Commissioner Farrar-Dyke,
Approve.
Commissioner Hall,
Approve.
Commissioner Rush,
Approve.
Commissioner Al-Khatib.
Approve.
Chair Hart, the motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Our next report will be presented by Investigation Program Manager Adam Quigley. Mr. Quigley?
Thank you, Chair Hart. Investigation Whiskey 0128 relates to an improper vehicle movement at Franconia Springfield Station on August 16, 2021. The train operator moved the train with passengers aboard in the wrong direction from the Franconia Springfield Station platform to the tail track. The passengers were in the tail track for approximately 10 minutes. The train operator had begun the day at the Alexandria Rail Yard on the blue and yellow line, where they were assigned an overtime shift. They typically work out at Shady Grove Yard on the red line. After bringing the train from Alexandria Yard to Franconia Springfield Station, the train operator stopped at the platform and opened the doors. The train operator remained at the outbound end of the train and did not change ends. Changing ends was required to move the train in the intended direction back toward Largo Town Center. The train operator notified the terminal supervisor that they were holding at signal J0342, which is a signal that leads to the tail track. This signal is not used by trains that are in revenue service. The terminal supervisor did not initially respond and may have stepped away from their work location. Ambient audio recordings show that non-work related audio was playing in the terminal supervisor's work area. The recording indicated the terminal supervisor was likely watching a television show or a movie. When the WMSC requested internet browsing history for that computer, Metrorail stated that there were no records in the time surrounding this event. However, a review of the browsing history from other periods during the weeks leading up to this event demonstrated that the terminal supervisor routinely used video streaming services prior to this event. The train operator repeated their attempt to contact the terminal supervisor. The terminal supervisor responded, but not repeat back the train operator's transmission. The terminal supervisor stated that signal J0306 would be lunar shortly, allowing for the train to cross over from track 2 to track 1. Signal J0306 is a signal at the inbound end of the train and is not the signal to the tail track that the train operator was facing. The terminal supervisor provided those instructions before actually setting the lunar or proceed signal at J0306. The signal at the other end of the train that the train operator was facing, signal J0342, had already been flashing lunar to indicate a crossover move into the middle tail track. The train operator acknowledged the crossover move, but did not provide a full repeat back before moving the train toward and entering the tail track. The terminal supervisor dispatched another train into revenue service to create space for this train in the tail track to return to the station platform. The train operator was removed from service for post-event drug and alcohol testing after returning the train to the platform. The terminal supervisor was not removed from service as required by Metrorail policy. The train operator normally worked at a Shady Grove division on the red line. They did not undergo any special familiarization training before working the blue line. The investigation also identified fatigue risk factors and the lack of repeat back between the train operator and terminal supervisor as contributing factors to this event. The WMSC is assessing territory familiarization through rail operations audit. A draft of that report is being finalized. As corrective actions following this and other events, Metrorail will install CCTV camera and ensure all phone conversations are recorded at all terminal locations and yard towers. Metrorail will restrict the types of allowable internet site access on terminal and tower computers. Metrorail also distributed a lessons learned bulletin and will conduct safety stand downs with emphasis on communication and roadway operation procedures. And also a lessons learned document was distributed, which focused on lead familiarization and communication. Metrorail safety officers are spot checking terminals and towers. Thank you. This completes the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Quigley. I'm just curious, how does their policy regarding watching TV on your computer, how does that compare to policies regarding cell phone use while on duty?
Actually, televisions, movies, radios, they all fall under the cell phone electronic device policy, so they're all prohibited.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from any of the other commissioners for Mr. Quigley?
I have a question, Chair Hart.
Yes, please, Commissioner Lobby.
Your question, Chair Hart, was interesting, and I note that in the report it says that in the next room there is a television, and there was some confusion on whether over the radio tapes they were hearing the television or the computer, and it was determined that the television was too far away. But it essentially said that the technical or the terminal supervisors would essentially, from my interpretation, be in the next room with the television and then go back and forth in order to take care of any radio messages. Is that still the case, Mr. Quigley?
No, the door that separates, or there's a wall with the door that separates between the break room and the terminal supervisor's work area. That door should remain closed. The TV volume should be turned down. There was no, I guess we couldn't determine that the terminal supervisor was listening to or watching a movie on the desktop computer that is in their work area. At the same time, I highly doubt WMATA is paying for premium TV channels for break rooms. So we had long conversations with ARTRA. We're still waiting for ARTRA to kind of pull the trigger and limit these websites. The Rail Operations Control Center has a very prohibited, restricted access to internet. So their desktop computers, they can't surf the internet, browse, look up websites or anything like that. because they're focusing on train movement. So terminal supervisors and tower operators are doing the same, have the same responsibility moving trains. So they should also have the same restrictions set on their computers.
But certainly the report indicated that it seemed to be standard procedure to be listening to TV while they were also manning their station there on the radio. Is that your understanding?
My understanding is that it was going on, and really after this event happened, myself and Natalie, we really increased our spot like audits where we were listening to live ambient, in different towers and terminals. We came across other individuals doing the same and immediately notified SAFE. It really wasn't until we identified these other events that's when Archer kind of decided, okay, yeah, we need to do something about this.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lobby, for your question. Mr. Quigley, what is ARTRA?
It's the department that's responsible for the train operators and the rail supervisors in the field.
Okay, so that's part of Metro, in other words.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. Okay, are there questions from any of the other commissioners for Mr. Quigley? Okay, seeing none, is there a motion to adopt investigation report Whiskey 0128?
So move.
So move, Commissioner Hall. Is there a second? Thank you for your motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Farrar Dyke, thank you for your second. I will now ask Council Brackett Smith to conduct our recorded vote.
Chair Hart,
Approve.
Commissioner Bob,
Approve.
Commissioner Farrar Dyke,
Approve.
Commissioner Hall,
Approve.
Commissioner Rush,
Approve.
Commissioner Al-Khatib.
Approve.
Chair Hart, the motion carries.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Smith. The next report will be Mr. Bruce Walker. Mr. Walker, floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Hart. Investigation Whiskey 0129 relates to a red signal overrun at Largo Town Center on August 18th, 2021. After receiving improper instructions from the terminal supervisor, the train operator of train ID 403 moved the train beyond a red signal, proceeding on an incorrect route through the interlocking towards the opposite track. At 0450 hours, the terminal supervisor took control of the operations board from the Rail Operations Control Center. They did not set the correct route and a lunar signal for train 403, the first revenue train of the day. The train operator departed Largo Town Center after receiving face-to-face directions from the terminal supervisor. The train operator did not verify a lunar signal and correct rail alignment. They stopped the train after the train began to cross over from track 1 to track 2. Without informing the Rail Operations Control Center about the red signal overrun, the terminal supervisor called the ROCC and requested the rail traffic controller cross train 403 back over to track 1 at Morgan Boulevard Station. The terminal supervisor instructed the train operator to continue to Morgan Boulevard, where RLCC would cross the train back to the correct track. After receiving a red signal overrun alarm and gathering additional information from the terminal supervisor, the controller instructed the train operator to stop the train. Train service was suspended between Largo Town Center and Morgan Boulevard until the interlocking operator could inspect for damage. The train operator was removed from service, and after they were allowed to proceed to Morgan Boulevard Station, both the terminal supervisor and the train operator indicated feeling rushed. Metrorail had recently changed schedules, so the first revenue train from Largo Town Center was dispatched from New Carrollton Yard. On this day, that train was delayed by track work. That led to the terminal supervisor to instruct this train operator, who was on duty as a yard operator, to go into service using an available GAP train already in Largo Town Center to start service on time. Fatigue risk was also identified as a contributing factor, as video evidence shows the train operator appears to be falling asleep while in the operator's cab. Metrorail will encourage employees to report procedural deviations that they feel are unsafe. The Office of Rail Transportation will ensure terminal supervisors receive refresher training regarding their responsibilities and operations. Metrorail will document terminal supervisors' observations by division managers. There are open corrective actions regarding fatigue management and the implementation of recording devices and terminals. The process for these recording devices installation is underway. Thank you. That completes this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Walker, for that report. You mentioned about fatigue management program. So what do you know about the determination of fatigue beyond just hours of service compliance? What do you know about whether the operator is actually tired because of who knows what reason, that even though they can be in complete compliance with hours of service?
Well, for this particular event and the days leading up to the event, the employee reported they're awake in bedtime. So the employee stated that they had 6 hours of sleep preceding this event, and they were awake for 14.4 hours. So they openly admitted that there was fatigue that could have been present during this event.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from any of the other commissioners for Mr. Walker?
I do have a question. In your report, you indicate that Metrorail will document terminal supervisor observations by division managers. Will we have an opportunity to confirm whether or not these observations are actually being made?
Commissioner Hall, yes, we will have the opportunity during ongoing audits. That will be one of the things that I will be looking for, but we can request those reports as well as part of our routine inspections and observations.
Okay, thank you for your question, Commissioner Hall. Are there any questions from any of the other commissioners for Mr. Walker? Okay, seeing none, is there a motion to adopt investigation report Whiskey 0129?
So moved.
Seconded. Commissioner Al-Khatib, is there a second? Thank you for the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Rush, thank you. I will now ask Council Brackett Smith to conduct our recorded vote.
Chair Hart,
Approve.
Commissioner Bob,
Approved.
Commissioner Farrar Dyke,
Approve.
Commissioner Hall,
Approve.
Commissioner Rush,
Approve.
Commissioner Al-Khatib.
Approve.
Chair Hart, the motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Walker, will you now present the next report?
Yes, thank you, Chair Hart. Investigation Whiskey 0130 is related to improper roadway worker protection and a near miss on the red line on July 21st, 2021. Metrorail track inspectors entered the roadway at Tacoma Station without permission and without any required roadway worker protection to continue a track inspection. This led to a near miss of a collision with a train. The roadway worker in charge had requested and received permission to enter the roadway between Rhode Island Avenue and Brooklyn and between Fort Totten and Tacoma Station under advanced mobile flagger protection. After permission was granted to walk between Fort Totten and Tacoma stations, there was no further communication between the RIC and the RLCC or the RIC and either of the two advanced mobile flaggers. At approximately 12:36 p.m., the work crew entered the roadway at Tacoma Station without contacting the RLCC or their AMF. At 12:43 p.m., train ID 101 arrived at Tacoma. The train operator did not report the personnel on the roadway. At 12:52 p.m., the train operator of train ID 205 reported to the RLCC that they came upon personnel between Silver Spring and Tacoma Station at full speed. Because there was no AMF on the platform at Silver Spring, and there had been no notice provided by ROCC that personnel were on the roadway in that location. The train operator applied the brakes, but came to a stop only after passing the inspectors, who had moved out of the way. 1 minute later, the train operator moved the train another 887 feet before stopping again. An RLCC controller then instructed train ID 205 to continue at restricted speed to Tacoma Station. Metrorail did not remove any members of the work crew for post-event testing as required by Metrorail's policy. Metrorail is addressing inconsistencies in implementation of post-event testing in response to the Wmsc's Fitness for Duty audit finding number 7. Track Instructors is developing a departmental specific procedure to ensure testing is completed. Metrorail's Department of Rail Transportation reissued a rail operations personnel notice directing train operators to stop their trains and report all encounters and observations of unexpected personnel on the roadway. Track instructors raised this event in their safety meeting. Metrorail Safety Standards Committee is conducting an evaluation of the Metrorail Safety Rules and Procedures Handbook as it relates to roadway worker protection. This includes a review of the current procedures for establishing advanced mobile flagger protection. Thank you, and this completes this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Are there any questions from the commissioners for Mr. Walker?
Chair Hart, I have a question.
Yes, Commissioner Lobby, please.
So in this particular case, Mr. Walker, this is a case where there was not really a problem with the roadway worker protection requirements. It was just a case where none of them were followed. Is that correct?
Yes, there was a practical drift from the rules. They failed to verify that their AMF was in position before continuing their walk. So the rules were in place. They just did not follow the rules.
Okay, and I note that the train was going 60 miles an hour when they passed this crew. Is that an appropriate speed for this piece of track? I'm not sure what the limits are.
The maximum authorized speed on the red line in that section of track, I believe, is 59 miles per hour. So the train can achieve 60 miles an hour before the train operator begins.
So that's within the tolerances. That's
Yes.
nothing to be concerned with. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lobby. Are there any questions from any of the other commissioners for Mr. Walker? Okay, seeing none, is there a motion to adopt investigation report whiskey 0130?
So moved.
Commissioner Rush moved. Thank you for the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Bob, thank you. I will now ask Council Brackett Smith to conduct our recorded vote.
Chair Hart,
Approve.
Commissioner Bob,
Approved.
Commissioner Farrar-Dyke,
Approve.
Commissioner Hall,
Approve.
Commissioner Rush,
Approve.
Commissioner Al-Khatib.
Approved.
Chair Hart, the motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Investigation Analyst, Ms. Natalie Keyroad will now present our next report. Ms. Keyroad?
Thank you, Jim. Investigation Whiskey 0131 relates to improper roadway protection at Fort Totten Station on August 12, 2021. The student radio rail traffic controller granted a track instructor's inspection crew foul time to cross a designated hotspot between Fort Totten and Tacoma stations, then permitted a train to move through the area where the work crew was under foul time protection. At 10:49 a.m., the roadway worker in charge of a track inspection crew requested and was granted foul time protection to cross a designated hotspot between Silver Spring and Rhode Island Avenue stations. A hotspot is a designated area that requires foul time protection to access. During this time, an advanced mobile flagger held trains at Fort Totten Station. At 11 a.m., the RIC relinquished foul time and requested foul time for the next hotspot. The request was denied by the student controller until the crew reached the new location. At 11:01 a.m., the work crew made another foul time request. The crew was instructed to wait until train 108 passed them. At 11:09 a.m., the RIC confirmed train 108 passed their location. Train 151 then arrived on the platform at Fort Totten Station. At 11:10 a.m., the student controller granted foul time to the work crew. They then quickly attempted to cancel this communication after realizing that train 151 had already left the platform at Fort Totten. Due to other radio transmissions, the student radio rail controller was delayed for nearly a minute before instructing the RIC to stand by and stand clear. The train had already passed the crew on the roadway. The crew had begun walking in the foul time area without confirming their AMF understood that foul time was in place and that no trains were permitted to enter the area. After foul time protection was properly established, the crew was permitted to complete their walk to Fort Totten Station. The student radio controller and the on-the-job training instructor were removed from service for post-incident testing. This investigation revealed that the ROCC on-the-job training instructor was a controller filling in who had not received any training or instruction for the role. Metrorail has an open cap related to structured and standardized on-the-job training within the ROCC. Metrorail is in the process of developing this training. Metrorail is reviewing the process of documenting and tracking foul time protection. This includes enhancements to the foul time checklist sheet used to document work crews under foul time protection. Thank you. That concludes this presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Key-Rose. Are there any questions from the commissioners for Ms. Key-Rose?
I have a question.
Yes, please, Commissioner Hall.
So in this case, we had a student or trainee controller giving instruction to a train operator. Do we know if in this incident that trainee was being actively monitored by another controller?
Yes. So the on-the-job training instructor that was with the student controller was filling in for the actual trainer who was out that week. So they were never trained in that role to be a training instructor. And that is one of the open caps Metrorail has right now. They're working on developing a standardized training for these instructors. And throughout the shift, even though that controller was filling in to be an instructor, they did really seem to be paying attention and on it. It seemed that in this moment, it happened pretty quick, and they did catch it as soon as they granted the foul time. The train had already left the platform, and they weren't able to get in contact with the RIC before the train reached them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hall. Any questions from any of the other commissioners for Ms. Key-Rose? Okay, seeing none, is there a motion to adopt investigation report whiskey 0131?
So moved.
Commissioner Rush moved. Thank you for the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Al-Khatib. Thank you. Now, I will now ask Council Brackett-Smith to conduct our recorded vote.
Chair Hart,
Approved.
Commissioner Bob,
Approved.
Commissioner Farrar,
Approve.
Commissioner Hall,
Approved.
Commissioner Rush,
Approved.
Commissioner Al-Khatib.
Approved.
Chair Hart, the motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Our next investigation report will be presented by Mr. Quigley. Mr. Quigley, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Hart. Investigation whiskey 0132 relates to an improper roadway worker protection at L'Enfant Plaza Station, July 26, 2021. A Metrorail track and structures cleaning crew entered the roadway at L'Enfant Plaza Station when the Rail Operations Control Center believed the crew was entering the roadway between Shaw Howard and Mount Vernon Square Station. At 11:43 p.m., the roadway worker in charge requested permission via radio to activate their track rights at F03, which is L'Enfant Plaza Station. The ROC radio controller repeated back the rights that were requested at Echo 1 N2 037 plus 00 to 060 plus 00. Those chain marker numbers on the F line included L'Enfant Plaza Station, but on the E line include Shaw Howard and Shaw Howard Station. Neither the RIC nor the ROC controller used 100% repeat back, and the RIC used the letter F rather than Foxtrot in their transmission. At approximately 1:08 a.m., the ROC button controller established foul time protection at the chain marker specified in the track right system at Shaw Howard Station. The ROC radio controller provided the signals that were read as part of the foul time protection on the E line in a radio transmission granting track access. The RIC did not identify that the stated signals were not at L'Enfant Plaza Station and did not conduct a 100% repeat back. The RIC entered the roadway at L'Enfant Plaza Station. The RIC's location and the miscommunication were only identified when the RIC reported hot sticking to confirm power was down at L'Enfant Plaza Station. In fact, third rail power remained energized at L'Enfant Plaza Station. The RIC had used a broken hot stick. The written work assignment for the RIC had conflicting information about the location of work. L'Enfant Plaza Station was written at the top of the general orders and track right system assignment, but the chain markers and alphanumeric information on the same document reflected Shaw Howard Station. Metrorail is evaluating technology solutions to effectively prevent conflicting or erroneous information from being entered into general orders and track rate system. Metrorail has a cap, or has a few open caps related to 100% repeat back and radio communications. Metrorail conducted a safety stand down after this event. The WMSC is assessing physical characteristics and territory familiarization in the ongoing rail operations audit. That completes his presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Quigley. This is just one example of how many moving parts there are in the whole roadway worker protection issue and why it's such a complex issue that needs immediate attention to be addressed before somebody gets hurt or worse.
Absolutely.
Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Mr. Quigley?
I have a question, Chair Hart.
Yes, Commissioner Lowry, please.
Mr. Quigley, can you tell me a little bit more about this broken hot stick? You know, are they tested? How do you know if it's working or not? I mean, that would seem pretty critical if it didn't work and the third rail was hot and you didn't get an indication. Can you tell me a little bit more about what they found out?
Yeah, and then I'll actually pass this question off to Mr. Walker. Bruce, he's more familiar with the testing procedures of the hot stick and what's being done prior to their use.
So, hello, Commissioner Lobby. So the personnel are required to verify that the hot stick is working by using an outlet before they take the equipment to the roadway. So that step skipped prior to the personnel going out there. If they're not able to utilize a working outlet, they're to go to known power source or a part of the rail where power is energized and test that the hot stick is actually working before they test that it's not de-energized. If that answers your question.
Was this a daily test that must be done, or?
It's more than daily. It's before they go out to test to see if the section of track is de-energized. So it should happen at least once before the shift goes out there. So it should be done daily, if not more often, as they're required to check to see if the rail continues to be de-energized as they're working through their shift.
So that step was obviously skipped on this day, right?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lobby, for your question. Are there any other questions from the commissioners for Mr. Quigley? Okay, seeing none, is there a motion to adopt investigation report whiskey 0132?
Move.
So move, Commissioner Hall. Thank you for the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Rush, I believe that was.
Bob.
Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Bob. Okay, I see it now. Thank you for the second. I will now ask Council Brackett Smith to conduct our recorded vote.
Chair Hart,
Approve.
Commissioner Bob,
Approved.
Commissioner Farardike,
Approve.
Commissioner Hall,
Approve.
Commissioner Rush,
Approve.
Commissioner Al-Khatib.
Approved.
Chair Hart, the motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. The next report will be presented by Ms. Keyrose. Ms. Keyrose, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Hart. Investigation Whiskey 0133 relates to improper roadway protection in a near miss near Forest Glen Station on August 6, 2021. Rail traffic controllers permitted an equipment operator to operate a prime mover through an area on the roadway where a traction power maintenance crew was working under foul time protection. This led to a near miss of a collision with workers on the tracks. The controllers had incorrectly removed foul time protection indicators from the Advanced Information Management System screen after a different traction power maintenance crew relinquished their foul time near Wheaton Station. These on-screen indicators include red signals, blue blocks, and human forms. The button control removed these protections for the crew near Forest Glen Station after being told by the radio controller that the crew had also relinquished their foul time. The radio controller then gave permission for the equipment operator of Prime Mover 60 to travel under an absolute block from Forest Glen Station to Wheaton Station. The equipment operator of another maintenance vehicle who had traveled with PM60 in a convoy block to Forest Glen Station asked over the radio whether personnel were clear of the roadway. Someone, it's unclear who, but was not the controller, responded, "That's a negative." PM60 moved toward Wheaton Station. The work crew quickly moved to a place of safety on the stairs between track 1 and track 2 as they saw Prime Mover 60 approaching. The crew reported the event to ROCC, at which time ROCC controllers reestablished foul time protections. Metrorail is reviewing the process of documenting and tracking foul time protection. Thank you. That completes this presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Key-Rose. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Ms. Key-Rose?
I have a question, Chair Hart.
Yes, Commissioner Labby, I assumed you would.
Yes, I'm sorry to be a broken record here.
No apology necessary. This is a key issue that we need to pay more attention to, and we are doing that as we speak.
Yeah, this is another scary accident. I wanted to ask, when you have foul time, do you have is there a watchman or a lookout protecting the crew, or is it every man for himself there? Every man for himself.
Typically in a walking crew, yes, they have the advanced mobile flagger that's at the previous station to notify the vehicles that there's somebody there. In this instance, the power crews, they are not considered a mobile crew because they're entering the roadway in one location, and because they're not walking to another station, it is not required to have an AMF.
Okay, so there's nobody looking out for oncoming trains or anything. It's every person that's doing the work. They have to basically look out for their own safety in case somebody violates their area there. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Labby, and thanks again for helping to ensure the commission intensely focuses on this issue, because sooner or later we're going to run out of luck and somebody's going to be hurt or worse. So thank you for pursuing it. Are there any questions from any of the other commissioners for Ms. Key-Rose? All right, seeing none, is there a motion to adopt investigation report whiskey 0133?
So moved.
Commissioner Alcative, thank you for the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Rush, thank you. I will now ask Council Brackett Smith to conduct our recorded vote.
Chair Hart,
Approved.
Commissioner Bob,
Approved.
Commissioner Ferrardike,
Approve.
Commissioner Hall,
Approve.
Commissioner Rush,
Approve.
Commissioner Alcative.
Approve.
The motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Our next report will be presented by Mr. Bruce Walker. Mr. Walker.
Thank you again, Chair Hart. Investigation Whiskey 0134 relates to an improper roadway worker protection on the green and yellow lines near Fort Totten Station on July 30th, 2021. A piggyback work crew began work without permission, without establishing their own work zone, and prior to the roadway worker in charge establishing the larger work zone. The roadway worker in charge made this discovery after failing to receive a response to a request for the piggyback crew to move their prime mover within the work area. In addition to not having permission from the RIC to be on the roadway, the piggyback crew had not placed required safety mats, flares, or shunts in their work area as required. After properly establishing their piggyback work area, the crew was instructed to complete their work. Following completion, they were removed from service. During an investigative interview, the piggyback crew leader, who is a supervisor, indicated he did not know the RIC was required to give permission for the work zone to be set up and inspected before the piggyback crew starts work. Metrorail did not conduct post-incident drug and alcohol testing for the piggyback crew leader as required by Metrorail policy. The RIC was tested and was not in violation of Metrorail policies. Metrorail is required to address its inconsistent implementation of post-event testing in response to the Wmsc's Fitness for Duty Audit Finding Number 7, which was issued on August 31st, 2021. Metrorail is in the early stages of a process to review its roadway worker protection rules, including those rules related to piggybacking work crews. Thank you. That completes this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. And that shows once again, this is not the first report today. There, drug and alcohol and post-event drug and alcohol inspections were not conducted. So hopefully their response to our fitness for duty audit will produce some results on this difficult issue. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Mr. Walker? All right, hearing none, is there a motion to adopt investigation report whiskey 0134?
So moved.
So moved, Commissioner Rush. Thank you for the motion. Is there a second? I'll make the second.
Second.
So I will now ask Commissioner Brackett Smith to conduct our recorded vote.
Got a promotion here. Now, Chair Hart,
Approve.
Commissioner Bob,
Approve.
Commissioner Farage,
Approve.
Commissioner Hall,
Approve.
Commissioner Rush,
Approve.
Commissioner Al-Khatib.
Approve.
Chair Hart, the motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Our next report will be presented by Mr. Jermaine Walker. Mr. Walker?
Thank you, Chair Hart. Investigation Whiskey 0135 relates to a red signal overrun at Cheverly Station on July 30th, 2021. The equipment operator of Prime Mover 47 overran a red signal outside of Cheverly Station, triggering an alarm in the Rail Operations Control Center. When contacted by a ROC controller approximately 14 minutes later, the equipment operator denied passing the red signal. Metrorail Safety Department personnel responded to the scene and confirmed that the vehicle had overran the signal. Metrorail requires operators to stop no closer than 10 feet from a red signal. The vehicle stopped with the front of the vehicle beyond the red signal. The vehicle was the trailing unit in the convoy block. Track circuit data analysis shows the vehicle was moving at an average of 20 miles per hour prior to the red signal overrun, 33% faster than the 15 mile per hour maximum authorized speed in a convoy block. Operators in a convoy block are also required to be prepared to stop within half the range of distance. Within half the range of distance. A convoy block allows a group of roadway maintenance machines to travel together with adequate spacing between them. In an interview, the equipment operator stated that they accelerated to approximately 25 miles per hour to 30 miles per hour, checked their gauges, looked back at the flat car attached to their vehicle, then saw the red signal, at which time they applied emergency brakes and stopped the vehicle. Metrorail did not perform post-event drug and alcohol testing of the equipment operator as required by its policies. Metrorail's tester and site personnel did not test the operator due to an incorrectly checked box on a testing form. Metrorail is required to address its inconsistent implementation of post-event testing in response to Wmsc's Fitness for Duty Audit finding number 7 issued on August 31st, 2021. Metrorail must also address equipment operator training in response to roadway maintenance machine audit findings issued earlier this year, and must address fatigue policy compliance in response to other findings in their fitness for duty audit and other open caps. Metrorail issued a safety bulletin on convoy block movement. Thank you. That completes this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Could you comment on the 14 minutes it took for the ROC controller to contact the operator after the red signal was run? Is that surprising, unusual? What can you say about that 14 minutes?
Commissioner, I'm gonna let either Mr. Adam Quigley or Bruce Walker answer that particular question, if you don't mind.
Thank you.
Yeah, Chair Hart, with a lot of moving parts with the ROC controllers, overnight work, setting up multiple work locations, getting crews, ready to conduct their work for the night. So it probably just took them 14 minutes to realize that that unit hadn't cleared the interlocking and reached out to that operator. So it could have been longer, it could have been quicker. It's just a matter of workload that the controller was dealing with.
Okay, thank you. That just seemed a little long to me for something as serious as running a red signal. So thank you for that. Any other commissioners have any questions for Mr. Walker?
I had a question, Mr. Hart.
Yes, Commissioner Lobby.
That you said that this group was operating in convoy. Does that mean that they're coupled together like in a train, or are they individual operators operating individual machines?
Commissioner Lobby, that's correct. They were operating as a group, but different operators and different pieces of equipment as they went along down the tracks.
So I'm quite surprised that the operator did not know what the speed limit is. Were all the operators in this convoy, were they all operating at 20, 30 miles an hour when they should have been at 15?
We don't have all the information as far as miles per hour with the other vehicles we're doing. We checked in on this particular vehicle as we were focusing in on the particulars of why this operator had ran this red signal.
Any explanation why he wouldn't know the speed limit?
I'd have no particular explanation as to why he wouldn't know the speed limit. Operators are trained to be aware and check their gauges, speedometers as they're in location as where to they're operating at. But the operator also indicating that, you know, he checked his unit as far as his flat for a second and then looked back. I mean, while that's a possibility, you still are to know where the next signal is and where you're at, so that you can call out the proper signal and location for your location of travel.
But would it be your opinion that if he had been operating at the correct speed, he wouldn't have overrun the red signal?
I would say yes. If you're taught that restricted speed coming from the railroad, or if you're operating in this particular juncture that you're supposed to be operating a convoy block, and if the rules state that you're supposed to travel within the range of vision, that means you're supposed to be able to stop as soon as you see something that doesn't look right, whether it be a broken rail, another vehicle, or anything of that, or any type of obstruction that would prohibit you from operating the way you're supposed to. So yes, Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Walker.
You're welcome, sir.
Thank you for
Chair
your
Hart, I
question.
also have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
My question for Mr. Walker is with regards to the post-event testing. And in this instance, Metrorail didn't perform the post-event drug and alcohol testing of the equipment operator as required. And it was indicated that the Metrorail testing site personnel did not test the operator due to an incorrectly checked box on the testing form. I'm trying to understand what that is and how that happens.
And Commissioner, I'm gonna leave that question for either Bruce or Adam if they have a little bit more clarification on that one, if they don't mind.
Thank you.
All right, so the box that was checked ruled out the operator from from contributing to this red signal overrun. We know that the operator did contribute to the red signal overrun, or they couldn't rule it out 100%. The box should never been checked. So there is a form that the supervisors fill out, check, employee ID, and send down with another rail supervisor or supervisor to the drug testing facility. The individuals at the drug testing facility look over the paperwork, and everything has to be filled out correctly for them to test the individual. Because this box was checked saying that the operator had been ruled out, they decided not to test the operator. That pretty much sums it up, sir. So WMATA is trying to expand or educate these supervisors, on how to properly fill out these documents, maybe even making the document a little bit more simpler, so there isn't this type of confusion going forward.
So if I understand that, then in this instance, the supervisor either mistakenly didn't check the correct box or purposefully didn't check the correct box.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Hall. Are there any questions from any of the other commissioners for Mr. Walker? Okay, hearing none. Is there a motion to adopt investigation report whiskey 0135?
So moved.
So moved, and that was
Hall.
Commissioner Al-Khatib. Thank you for the motion. Is there a second?
Commissioner Hall.
Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Hall. Okay. I'm not, my pictures aren't working well, so I apologize for that. Commissioner Al-Khatib, you did the second?
Second.
Okay, thank you for the motion and the second. I'll now ask Councilor Brackett Smith to conduct our recorded vote.
Chair Hart.
Approved.
Commissioner Bob,
Approved.
Commissioner Farardike,
Approve.
Commissioner Hall,
Approve.
Commissioner Rush. Commissioner Rush, it looks like you're. Okay, we'll count that as a yes. Let the record show that Commissioner Rush gave a thumbs up there for his vote. Commissioner Alcative.
Approve.
Chair Hart, the motion carries.
Brackett, I got the audio back. Come on.
Okay.
Approve.
All right, motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
All votes
Mr.
are
Quigley, will you please present our next investigation report?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chair Hart. Investigation Whiskey 0136 relates to an improper roadway protection near Van Dorn Street Station on July 8th, 2021. The Rail Operations Control Center identified that a mobile work crew apparently moved in the same direction as normal train traffic rather than the opposite direction of traffic. The roadway worker in charge requested and was granted foul time protection to cross from one track to the other to exit the roadway via the access gate they had used to enter the roadway between Van Dorn Street and Franconia Springfield stations. The movement to return to the access gate was in the normal direction of traffic. Metrorail training instructs personnel to walk against the normal direction of traffic for their safety. Metrorail's written rules state that individuals on the roadway must walk against the direction of traffic when possible. The work crew had placed advanced mobile flaggers at Franconia Springfield Station and had 2 watchmen lookouts on the roadway. Due to the protections in place and the content of the rule, this event contradicted aspects of Metrorail's training, but did not violate Metrorail's written procedures. The probable cause of this event being reported was the complexity of and lack of clarity in Metrorail's roadway worker protection procedures. Metrorail has begun the process of revising these rules. This completes the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Quigley, for yet another roadway worker protection presentation. They're far too frequent. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Mr. Quigley? Okay, hearing none, is there a motion to adopt investigation report Whiskey 0136?
So moved.
So moved, Commissioner Bob. Is there a second? Thank you for your motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Rush. Thank you. I will now ask Council Brackett Smith to conduct our recorded vote.
Chair Hart,
Approved.
Commissioner Bob,
Approved.
Commissioner Farardike,
Approve.
Commissioner Hall,
Approve.
Commissioner Rush,
Approve.
Commissioner Alcative.
Approve.
Chair Hart, the motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Emergency Management Specialist Richard David will present the remaining 3 reports that are on this agenda today.
Thank you, Chair Hart. Investigation Whiskey 137 examines an evacuation for life safety reasons at Pentagon Station on August 3rd, 2021. This is a safety investigation relating specifically to Metrorail's evacuation, emergency preparedness, and response. This report does not address any criminal investigations into the precipitating event. The response begins following a fatal stabbing of a law enforcement officer in the bus area at Pentagon Station and the associated report of an active shooter after law enforcement responded to the stabbing. At 10:49 a.m., a Rail Operations Control Center Assistant Superintendent received notification from a Rail Operations Information Center Information Specialist that the Metrorail Transit Police Department reported an active shooter event at Pentagon Station. Trains en approach to Pentagon Station on track 1 and 2 were instructed to hold while a request to close the station was confirmed with MTPD. During this event, An upper-level member of Metrorail's executive management team requested updates and provided directives to the ROCC assistant superintendent outside the incident command system, first calling to instruct the assistant superintendent to bypass Pentagon Station in both directions. At 10:52 a.m., the radio RTC instructed train 302 train operator holding at Pentagon City Station not to service Pentagon Station. At 10:54 a.m., the radio controller instructed train 302 train operator to key on any remaining customers at Pentagon Station for evacuation, but the train had already bypassed the station. At 10:56 a.m., non-revenue train 715 was instructed to key on customers at Pentagon Station and to offload them at Pentagon City Station. 2 rail transportation supervisors were dispatched. At 10:58 a.m., approximately 9 minutes after the evacuation was requested, the remaining customers were keyed onto train 715. The Pentagon station manager was notified of the emergency at 11:02 a.m., 13 minutes after the ROCC received its initial notification. At 11:25, at the request of Metro Transit Police and the Pentagon Force Protection Agency, third rail power was de-energized on tracks 1 and 2 at Pentagon Station. At 11:32 a.m., the MOC desk reported having personnel shelter in place at Pentagon Station, locked in an ancillary room. At 12:23 p.m., after the initial request was previously made to enter the roadway to conduct a search, it was deemed unnecessary and no personnel entered the roadway. Metrorail did not follow its procedures for establishing incident and on-scene commander and did not notify and effectively communicate with personnel in a timely manner, resulting in confusion for some personnel. We are completing our work on the draft emergency management and fire life safety audit report, which includes assessments of Metrorail's incident command and emergency management processes and implementation. Thank you. That concludes this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. David. It seems like some pretty long timeframes for a situation this serious. I'm kind of surprised at that. Do you have any comments on how long things took to happen?
As you stated, sir, it did take too long of a time to transmit that information to where it needed to go. There's always some reaction time or latency in emergencies to gather data and send it, but this was awfully too long.
Mr. Chairman?
What can be done about that? Let me ask that question, then I'll go to you, Commissioner Bob. What should we do about that?
Well, we actually currently have a cap. 0 is Whiskey 0084, which addresses the communications.
Okay, yeah, you're right. Thank you for that. Commissioner Bob, you have a question?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this was a very serious incident over at the Pentagon, as I recall. So it just seems that it was a crisis situation. And so I'm just trying to wrap my head around the communications issues in this report, and given the nature of everything that was happening on that day, as to, whether or not our recommendation in those types of crises is, not our recommendation, but I'm not faulting our recommendation, but whether or not we overly criticizing Metro, given all that was happening on that day at the Pentagon. I mean, I'm not suggesting we give them a pass, but it just seems to me that was a significant event in a crisis situation. You know, that was very highly visible throughout the region.
It was all of those things, of course, Commissioner Bob. At the same time, particularly for any transit property, unfortunately, any transit property may become involved in significant events and noteworthy events. Our focus on this event is certainly limited to the safety event and the communication that occurred that is in our purview with regard to safety and passenger safety. And I would also want to make the point that by making statements about the event, we certainly don't view ourselves as being critical per se, except in as much as criticism may be constructive. I hope that's the intent of that is clear. We're focused on the safety event, and safety events are the kinds of things that do happen on this system and any other system. So that's why we view our handling of this incident as appropriate.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I guess I'm having some difficulty wrapping my head around the issue of safety, given the severity of what happened and the speed upon which agencies across the region were required to respond. I don't want to belabor the point, but those are just my thoughts. I mean, it was a significant issue in the region. I mean, we could probably draw some similar conclusions following 9/11, following Fort Totten, following some of the others. But those are just my thoughts.
I guess the way, maybe speaking to your concern, Commissioner Bob, excuse me, the way I look at this from our perspective outside the aspect of the criminal activity is in our purview, looking at the effectiveness of instructions and communications in an emergency situation so that trains can be moved or not moved as is really required. So really looking at the effectiveness of communications in an emergency.
Well, thank you for that comment, Commissioner Hall. One thing that occurs to me is, to the extent criminal activity is not that frequent on the system, it would seem like there's a real danger that if you train to it, the training will wash out by the time it happens because it's so rare. So I'm just thinking, preparing for very rare and unusual and serious circumstances is a challenge for anybody. So I'm not trying to dismiss what you're saying, but I'm just saying I can understand why the difficulty of making sure that people are prepared for highly unusual and serious events like this.
Well, I certainly want to encourage us not to be overly distracted by the criminal nature of the precipitating event. This is something that transit properties around the world face. It is a reality of operating transit, and it is a requirement for being prepared to operate transit. It's actually a requirement by the Federal Transit Administration that if there are evacuations for life safety reasons, they are handled as safety events that are inside the purview of the safety department and the state safety oversight agency. So this is a basic requirement, unfortunately, of the 21st century, to be prepared to respond quickly to fire life safety events, of which this, from a regulatory standpoint, falls into. Ms. Samarasinga may wish to comment further.
If I may add a few considerations to keep in mind. several events, starting with 2015's Lafont Fire and Smoke event, surfaced the need to have a coordinated emergency response that involves coordination amongst the various Metrorail personnel, including MTPD, rail transportation, and others who respond to ensure that an incident doesn't devolve further into chaos and injury and death. So this was very much a focus of the Lafont incident. Since the WMSC has been around, our focus has also been not only in investigating the causal factors that led to a given safety event, but looking at the emergency response following the event to restore the system and the conditions at that safety event location back to normal operations. It is important that emergency response activities are fully adhered to and carried out effectively and consistently, because as time and time again has shown in NTSB investigations, in instances on the Metrorail system when events have happened, that a mundane or innocuous event can easily devolve into one that causes further injury and further fatalities if the response to that simple event is not coordinated and effective. So that is the reason why emergency response is a focus of our safety investigations. And we are mandated to do so actually through federal regulation and FDA state safety oversight regulation. But that is why we pay such close attention to the emergency actions that are executed following the disruption of service. This is something that we are focused on in the pull-aparts that happened last year, in the runaway train event that happened this year in March, where there was an extraordinary protracted period of time where emergency response was not coordinated, and that led to passengers being on disabled trains for protracted periods of time. And currently, given COVID considerations and the environment of shared airspace within trains, it is imperative that emergency response works like clockwork. And that is why full-scale drills are conducted so that everybody who has a part to play knows what their part is, and it works like clockwork.
Thank you, Mr. Marsinger, for that very helpful explanation and context for a complex scenario. Are there any further questions from any of the other commissioners for Mr. David? All right, thank you for that very helpful discussion. Hearing no further questions, is there a motion to adopt investigation report Whiskey 0137?
So moved.
I'll move Commissioner Hull. Thank you for the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Farrar-Dyke. Thank you. I will now ask Council Brackett Smith to conduct our recorded vote.
Before we vote, Commissioner Rush has left the meeting due to a pre-scheduled commitment. So Commissioner Lobby, you are promoted from alternate commissioner to regular commissioner here. So you will be voting for the rest of the meeting.
Understood.
All right. So with that, Chair Hart.
Approve.
Commissioner Bob.
Same.
Commissioner Farrar-Dyke.
Approve.
Commissioner Hall.
Approve.
Commissioner Al-Khatib.
Approve.
Commissioner Lobby.
Approved.
Chair Hart, the motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Smith, and Commissioner Lobby, welcome to the fold.
Indeed, and one more note. Commissioner Lobby, you're also able to make motions, all that. So
Thank you very
you're a
much.
full member for the purposes of the rest of the meeting.
Thank you very much.
Look forward to your participation, which is always very helpful. I just lost my place. Just 1 second. Mr. David, would you continue with your second report?
Certainly will. Thank you, Chair Hart. Investigation Whiskey 0138 relates to an evacuation for life safety reasons of the lower level at Metro Center Station on August 1st, 2021. At approximately 9:36 a.m., a Metro Transit Police Department officer observed a suspicious object, later identified as a pipe, on the roadway near the third rail on the blue, orange, and silver line tracks. Approximately 24 minutes later, an MTPD officer notified a Metro Center station manager, who in turn called the Rail Operations Information Center in the ROCC to inform them of this hazard. Blue, orange, and silver line trains began single tracking on the lower level of Metro Center Station at 10:07 a.m. At 10:25 a.m., MTPD requested blue, orange, and silver line service be suspended and the lower level of Metro Center Station be evacuated. The upper level of the station, which provides red line service, remained open. During this event, MTPD personnel did not clearly communicate with each other. The on-scene commander and forward liaison were on two different radio channels after the commander switched channels without ensuring all personnel were aware of the change. Metrorail has related open corrective action under investigation Whiskey 0084 related to an improper customer evacuation by MTPD. These include improper communications from the MTPD incident commander to the ROCC and a checklist for MTPD incident response. Thank you. That completes this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. David. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Mr. David? Okay, hearing none, is there a motion to adopt investigation report Whiskey 0138?
Also move.
So move Commissioner Hull. Thank you. Is there a second?
Second,
Second, Commissioner Rush, was that?
Al-Khatib.
Al-Khatib, I'm sorry. I'm trying to get this picture problem fixed, so I apologize. I will now ask Council Brackett-Smith to conduct our recorded vote.
Chair Hart,
Approve.
Commissioner Bob,
Approve.
Commissioner Farrar Dyke,
Approve.
Commissioner Hall,
Approve.
Commissioner Al-Khatib,
Approve.
Commissioner Lobby.
Approved.
Chair Hart, the motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. David, your third report, please.
Thank you, Chair Hart. Investigation Whiskey 0139 relates to an evacuation for life safety reasons at Minnesota Avenue Station on October 14, 2021. The DC Office of Unified Communications, the City 911 call center, informed Metro Transit Police that they had received a bomb and shooting threat related to Minnesota Avenue and Benning Road stations. MTPD and the DC Police, the Metropolitan Police Department, responded. Minnesota Avenue Station was evacuated for life safety reasons, and the station was bypassed for approximately 23 minutes due to the investigation. Thank you. That completes this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. David. So let me, just for clarification, let me ask you, did things go right in this one? Did anything go wrong in this one? Where are we? I mean, we investigated, I understand, because we have to, not because it was, not because there was any accident as we think of accident, but because we have to, because accident includes in certain types of intentional wrongdoing like this. So what was the reason that what did we learn from this? I'm trying to figure out, was it a useful exercise for us to go and do this, or was it not? Just please help me fill that out.
As far as the investigation portion, I'm going to have to defer to Adam Quigley.
What was the question again, sir?
I just don't see this. Just suggests that we showed up, and that's the end of the story. So there must be more to it than that we showed up and that's the end of the story. What else is there to it? That why are we looking into this?
I think you
Maybe to add some clarification as, you know, perhaps as it relates to the evacuation that resulted, what was our view on the handling of the evacuation? Perhaps that's where we're going on this.
Right, I mean, it is required under the FTA to be, you know, A4 evacuation, so that's why this was looked into.
And so that takes away discretion. I mean, your question there, Chair Hart, was, you know, is there value to us looking into it? Often there is. However, because of the circumstances of this, we don't have discretion. It is considered an accident under the regulations.
So do we at least put in the report, yay or nay? Was it good? Did it go well?
And if it did go well, then we could provide kudos for it going well. And if
That's
it didn't
right.
go well, then we should suggest improvements.
I agree. So can we update this report to include?
Ms. Samara Singha, can you comment?
Sure, and so as the report describes, there was a determination made to bypass the station and evacuate the station for purposes as stated in the report for life safety reasons. Those things happened as required, and the bypassing of the station to assess the safety of the station was underway for about 23 minutes prior to Metro restarting servicing that station. So as far as the required process to assess the situation, evaluate it to make sure that life safety was still preserved if it was opened, was determined after MTPD conducted their required assessment. So yes, everything went well. And as I think it was Adam Quickly who described, this is a type of incident, an A4, which is an accident level event that we are required to focus on by FTA's regulation. And that is also the reason why you hear us reporting back on this.
So I think where we were going with our comments and questions was perhaps what is warranted here is some wording to the effect of the evacuation was carried out from the Commission's perspective according to existing policies and procedures. I think that's simple.
I would agree with that. I think it's incumbent on us if we're going to write reports when we criticize things. It's incumbent on us. If we see things going well, we should say that as well. And I'm going to suggest returning this report for further clarification that we investigated this because we had to, not because we saw anything right or wrong. And in fact, the activities that we are there to investigate went as they should have, and give kudos accordingly.
Okay, yeah, and we didn't find any issues with how this event took place or procedures. You know, they all seem followed, and that is identified in the report.
So any thoughts regarding tabling this for further clarification?
Chairman Hart, if I may suggest, if it would please the Commission, we can revise the report to reflect this staff observation that we've conveyed, that Adam Quigley and I have conveyed just now. However, that would be the extent of additive information that will be reflected in this report. So I would ask you all to consider whether, based on that, whether you all will be ready to approve it, adopt it today, or whether you would want us to reflect this information that we provided verbally just now in the staff observations part of the report.
And if it would be helpful, we could ask Mr. Smith, Max Smith, to describe what is in the report at this point.
Sure. Yeah, just to clarify again what's in the actual report itself. We do note that there were no items identified for corrective actions in the briefing document that was prepared for the commissioners, and likewise in considering the sufficiency of the Metrorail investigation into this, they also had no issues or recommendations or corrective actions identified specifically related to this incident, and each of those items is already documented in the report that is on your agenda at the moment.
So thank you. That's very helpful to explain that it's already in the report. It just wasn't in this explanation.
Correct.
Of the report. So you're, in your view, is the report ready for a vote? Is that what you're suggesting?
I believe that would be up to all of you, of course, but everything you described is documented in both the commissioner briefing document and the report already.
Okay, well, I guess I have to admit that I haven't seen the report itself, but based on what I'm hearing, I could accept voting on it now. Any thoughts from the commissioners on doing that?
I would support voting on it now.
Okay.
Given that we have heard indeed that in this incident what our investigation revealed was that the evacuation was conducted according to established rules and procedures.
Okay, thank you. And I think I heard a motion from Commissioner Farrar-Dyke.
You did.
Thank you for the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have several seconds.
I'll give it to Commissioner Lobby.
Oh, thank you, Commissioner.
Second by Commissioner Lobby. Thank you for that. I will now ask Council Brackett Smith to conduct our recorded vote.
Okay, so this is a vote to adopt the report, just so everyone knows. And it's clear. Chair Hart.
Approved.
Commissioner Bott.
Approved.
Commissioner Farrar-Dyke.
Approve.
Commissioner Hall.
Approve.
Commissioner Al-Khatib.
Approve.
Commissioner Lobby.
Approved.
Chair Hart, the motion carries.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Smith. We will now take up the next agenda item, which is corrective action plans. Ms. Samara Singh, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Hart. So due to the complexity and the nature of the safety events that we discover through our work, implementing the corrective actions to fully take care of those safety issues can take time. But each approved corrective action plan, or CAP, includes actionable items developed by Metrorail that, when fully implemented, can address the safety deficiency. As part of Metrorail's safety management system, they must then continually evaluate the mitigations for effectiveness and identify and implement continuous safety improvements. One corrective action plan that Metrorail recently met the requirements to close is C0020. This corrective action plan addresses our December 2019 finding that there was chaos and dysfunction in the Rail Operations Control Center, or ROCC, during unplanned events and emergencies. Metrorail did not initially propose sufficient corrective actions to address this finding. However, following extensive feedback from the Wmsc and the additional actions we took in 2020, Metrorail developed an acceptable corrective action plan that, in concert with other CAPs that are still in progress, is improving the conditions in and operation of the Rail Operations Control Center, or ROCC. This CAP included Metrorail's accountable executive, the general manager, taking full responsibility for the ROCC through a direct reporting structure. It also included the beginning of Metrorail's change to the ROCC organizational culture, changes to management coaching, and process changes. Metrorail hired a new Rail Operations Control Center director with experience in an air traffic control environment, implemented behavior expectations and provided training for managers, and added internal oversight and reviews. There's more work to do in many other areas, including to complete other corrective action plans related to the ROCC, but we are optimistic that the WMSC's findings and the directions have led to Metrorail setting a course that provides opportunities for WMATA to follow through on its commitments to continuous safety improvement. As far as current CAP development, We recently approved Metrorail's revised corrective action plan related to safety certification finding we issued in August of this year. This comprehensive finding identified that Metrorail was not following its own safety certification policies and procedures across a wide variety of projects. The corrective action plan is a path to addressing this issue so that Metrorail consistently and completely carries out its safety certification process. This process is a proactive way to identify, prioritize, and mitigate safety risks prior to putting projects or system modifications into service. This can lead to identifying engineering changes, training requirements, and improved interaction with other Metrorail systems. So safety certification offers all these benefits. A properly scaled safety certification effort from the conceptualization of a project through completion allows for improved functionality of design and more effective and efficient use of capital project investments. It also can reduce workarounds and change orders during construction and reduce the number and type of hazards found only after a project is in service. We have approved 4 Metrorail corrective action plan proposals related to the fitness for duty audit for implementation. We have provided our latest round of feedback and are awaiting Metrorail's revisions to other 11 CAPS proposals related to the fitness for duty audit. In relation to the railcar audit, we have approved 4 Metrorail corrective action plan proposals for implementation. Revised railcar caps will be due back to the Wmsc later this month. We have received Metrorail's initial cap proposals related to the traction power audit, and our team is now reviewing these cap proposals. We expect to provide feedback to or approvals to WMATA within the next week in line with our program standard. That concludes my update. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Samarasinha, for your update. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners? Okay, seeing none, we will now move on to our next item, which is audits, with an update from Audit Program Manager, Mr. Davis Ratic. Mr. Ratic.
Thank you, Chair Hart. As Ms. Samarasinha noted, we issued our audit of Metrorail's high voltage and traction power programs just after your last meeting. The audit demonstrates that Metrorail has made significant improvements since 2016, but that there are additional areas where safety improvements are required. As a result, WMSC issued 8 findings requiring corrective action plans and 4 recommendations that Metrorail must address. These findings include safety certification and approval deficiencies, and findings that Metrorail is not documenting, tracking, and conducting all preventive maintenance required by WMATA policy, manuals, and instructions. Other findings relate to equipment that is beyond its useful life and deficiencies in training, documentation, and hazard tracking and mitigation. Metrorail submitted its initial corrective action plan proposals at the end of last week. The WMSC is now reviewing these proposals. We expect to transmit a draft of our emergency management and fire life safety audit report to WMATA shortly. Our rail operations audit team is working on a draft report following our recent interviews and on-site work. And our station maintenance, elevator, and escalator audit team began audit interviews last week following extensive document reviews. Additional interviews and site visits are scheduled later this week. The team will then begin work on a draft report to transmit to WMATA for a technical review period. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ratic. Are there any questions from the commissioners regarding this update? I'd be interested in your thoughts on just sort of the general attitude when we show up to do an audit. Are we received with growls and roars, or are we received, you know, in the spirit in which we're there to try to do what we all want to do, which is to improve safety? I mean, what can you say about how WMATA receives us when we show up to do an audit, if there's a way to generalize it.
Generally, we're welcomed and we don't have any difficulties as far as things we access, but it also seems that things are made to be in order as well. So but that's the part of audits. They're predictable. WMATA knows we're coming. They're not surprised. So, but generally speaking, we don't have any issues, and folks are forthcoming with us and show us all the things we ask to see.
Well, thank you. That's helpful, and kudos to WMATA for approaching this in the spirit in which it's intended, which is that we're trying to do what everybody wants, which is to improve safety. So thank you for that. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Mr. Ratti? Okay, hearing none, we will now move to our next agenda item, which is our regular status report on our oversight of the implementation of the Silver Line Phase 2 safety certification process. Mr. Sahu?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Hart. Just wanted to make one quick remark. So today is the 80th anniversary of Pearl Harbor. So just wanted to commemorate, all the service members lost on that day, and also, commend current service members and our veterans.
Thank you for that observance. I appreciate that, Mr. Sahu. Thank you for that.
Yeah, thanks, Chair Hart. So I'll continue with the Silver Line Phase 2 status report. So the Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority has reached contractual milestones known as substantial completion with their contractors building both the rail yard and the stations and mainline tracks. They announced substantial completion for the rail yard last week, after previously reaching this point last month for the stations and mainline tracks. The WMSC does not have a role in determining substantial completion. However, resolving some of the issues that we have identified during the project is incorporated at this stage as part of MWA, which is again Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority processes. Metrorail is now advising on what test to conduct for simulated rail service, and MWA's contractor is executing additional testing. These preparations are necessary steps before Metrorail can take provisional care, custody, and control of the line at what is known as the Operational Readiness State, or ORD. Metrorail has not set a specific timeline for that date at this point. The Operational Readiness State is declared by Metrorail when all open construction items are mitigated or closed. This is when we at the WMSC will complete the final revision of Part 1 of our pre-revenue service review, focused on the line's construction. We transmitted the latest revision of our pre-revenue service report to MWA and Metrorail last week. We are tracking approximately 16 open items at this point in our pre-revenue service review Part 1 out of more than 100 items that we have tracked over the course of this process. All of the items have agreed upon paths forward to be completed. Items that have longer completion times may be shifted into Part 2 of our pre-revenue service review if they do not impact operational readiness. We receive and review documentation before we close out each item. Examples of items closed in this revision, it's revision 4, include the replacement of digital ammeters on DC traction power switchgear. These measuring devices feed information, so they measure amperage to relays that serve as protective devices to trip a breaker in the event of any abnormal condition on the tracks. The replacements for the faulty ammeters have been installed, and MWA and Metrorail checked the control wiring for damage and found no issues. 2 items related to crossbond construction have also been resolved. This relates to the spacing of crossbonds that play a role in both power and signaling systems. Placement of most of these crossbonds have been adjusted so they are the appropriate distance apart. MWA also conducted a load flow study, which is a power study, demonstrating that a design change for the locations of 7 bonds was acceptable. 1 item is being moved from Part 1 of our pre-revenue service review to Part 2. MWA and Metrorail have agreed to handle safety enhancements to the train wash warning system for the train wash track in the rail yard under an existing WMATA contract after the operational readiness state. So when WMATA gets care, custody, and control of the project, they will start installation. At the operational readiness state, Part 2 of our pre-revenue service review will continue immediately, covering Metrorail's testing and preparedness to operate and maintain the line. This includes staffing, training, testing, and appropriately documenting this work in accordance with Metrorail's Safety Certification Program Plan and the cooperative agreement between MWA and Metrorail. In recent weeks, we have been conducting this pre-revenue service review work primarily through regular meetings and documentation reviews due to the nature of the current areas of focus. We expect the amount of time we spend physically on site will increase again following the operational readiness date when additional Metrorail testing and operations increase. Our concurrence with Metrorail's Safety and Security Certification Verification Report, shorthand for SSCVR, is required in order for the line to open. The Safety and Security Certification Verification Report is Metrorail's documentation that it has identified and appropriately mitigated known hazards, and that the project has followed other aspects of the design, construction, and implementation process. All of these steps and requirements are based on Metrorail's own safety certification requirements, agreements, and policies. Metrorail has not set a time frame for when it is aiming to open the line, and we call that the revenue operations date, ROD. The timing of our work is entirely dependent on the progress that the Airports Authority and Metrorail make on their work to demonstrate that each required step has been completed. This includes the closure and mitigation of items that the WMSC has identified and communicated through our independent safety reviews of the project. In accordance with our program standard and FTA guidance, we also work in concert with separate FTA project management oversight on this project to ensure that our work is complete while avoiding duplication of effort. Thank you. That completes this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Sahu. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for this update?
Chair Hart, I had a question.
Yes, Commissioner Lowry.
Mr. Sahu, we have certainly, a role in the safety certification of the right of way. Can you tell us a little bit more about what role we would have on the maintenance facility that's out at Dulles? Is it the same as what we do on the right of way, or are there different elements?
Yes, so Commissioner Lobby, to put it short, it is the same. So obviously the rail yard has facilities rather than just tracks. So we would have the same oversight as mainline.
So we actually do oversight of the facility itself, the buildings, the work areas. How far-reaching is our authority there?
Yeah, that is a correct statement. So yeah, any of the shops, any of the maintenance facilities, we look at the concrete aprons for shops. If you want to get specific, stairwells, metal stairwells, if those are kind of deteriorating. So yeah, any facet of not only the tracks but the facilities as well.
Thank you.
So
An additional question, and I know we've had prior updates and reports on the work on the Silver Line extension. Do we continue to be satisfied with the level of cooperation we've been receiving, with the phase 2 in the work, our oversight work that we have?
Yeah, so Commissioner Hull, we actually have had a high level of cooperation. We wanted to avoid any issues that and lessons learned from phase 1. So I have weekly meetings with the Airports Authority's system safety and security manager. We have open lines of communication. We do meet with the WMATA or Metrorail, not only on a biweekly basis, specifically on the Silver Line, but if any concerns or urgent items do come up, there's 2 safe representatives at Metrorail that I communicate with. I have open lines of communication to their contractor that is specifically designated or dedicated to Silver Line.
Well, excellent. That's good news. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Mr. Sahu, what you mentioned relates basically to the structures of the new line, and I'm wondering, we've heard talk about whether the ROC has adequate controllers to control this segment. So what's the link between what you're doing and what they're doing, if there is any?
Right. So they are the ROCC is opening up another desk, I believe Ops 4. So this, it would be just like Ops 1, 2, and 3. The ROCC is in progress of, making sure their staffing levels are appropriate. There's the new power desk that is upcoming in the ROCC. So their staffing levels have to be at the proper levels, and then as well as the MOC. So there is a direct link, but I think the WMSC is looking at, once our pre-revenue service review part 2 starts, that's, Metrorail's, our oversight of Metrorail's readiness to operate and maintain the line, the rail extension. And so we will, we've been tracking it right now. Metrorail does have a monthly rail activation plan meeting where they go over all these metrics. And, we will be looking into those more in depth once Metrorail gets care, custody, and control of the project.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful. Are there any questions from any of the other commissioners for Mr. Sahu?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Commissioner Bob.
Yeah, perhaps at one of our meetings in the future, can we have this conversation at one of our work sessions? There's a lot to unpackage. From the beginning, when we were in this process and ongoing reports, and I really appreciate the report we're having today, but I'm just wondering, maybe out in the future, at a time that David feels is appropriate, we can have maybe just a little bit more in-depth discussion from staff or presentation, where we have an opportunity to probe just a little bit deeper.
Yes,
that's just my request.
That's a good thought. That's a good thought. We'll just pass that on to Dr. Meyer. Dr. Meyer, are you taking notes?
I'm not taking notes on where my mute button is, but yes, I'm taking notes on this, I assure you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the suggestion, Commissioner Bob. Any other comments, questions from the commissioners for this report, for this update, for Mr. Sahu's update? Okay, hearing none, we'll move to the next item on the agenda. We actually have 2 items on this portion of our agenda for today. The first deals with Metrorail's Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan revision, and the second deals with the independent audit of our own commission's financial accounts. So starting with Metrorail's Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan, that lays out the agency's commitment to a strong safety culture that reaches everyone from frontline workers and supervisors to executive management. Metrorail is required to review and update this plan at least annually. Dr. Meyer, do you have anything else to add?
Yes, I do. Thank you. This is Metrorail's first revision to its agency safety plan following the significant transition last year to the PTASP from the former System Safety Program Plan, or SSPP. This change and the annual revisions of the PTASP are required to meet WMSC requirements and federal regulations. The PTASP is required to include a safety management system, or SMS approach. The objectives of that are accountability, safety, increased use of data, and a very clear commitment that every employee, from frontline workers to the supervisors to managers, all the way to executive leaders, are accountable for upholding the commitments to safety. This includes clear direction on how each person at Metrorail can meet this safety responsibility. It takes training, avenues for reporting safety issues, and communication to keep everybody up to date on how these reports are being used to improve safety. This means that there must be an agency-wide safety objective. Senior managers must be committed to continually improving safety, and there must be specific methods, processes, and structures in place to meet these safety goals. It also means that WMATA must continually evaluate the effectiveness of its mitigations, support the identification of new hazards, and determine the need for new controls. This requires training, communication, and other actions to create a positive safety culture at all levels of the workforce. The goal is to be proactive by identifying and addressing issues before an accident occurs and by ensuring continuous learning and open dialogue. The WMSC has reviewed and provided feedback and direction on multiple drafts of WMATA's agency safety plan revision leading up to the final version that is before you today. At a high level, some of the revisions this year include updates to planned SMS implementation timelines and tasks for the next 2 years, Safety Department organizational changes associated with these implementation tasks, as well as some specific requirements of our program standard that require Metrorail to make notifications to its personnel and contractors that they should cooperate with us and respond immediately to the WMSC. As the State Safety Oversight Agency for Metrorail, the WMSC must approve Metrorail's PTAS provision before it can be implemented. A vote to approve the plan today means that the commissioners concur with WMSC staff assessment that the plan complies with federal law and regulations. The plan has a sufficiently explicit process for safety risk management with adequate means of risk mitigation. The plan includes a process and a timeline for annual reviews and updates. The plan includes a comprehensive staff training program for operations personnel directly responsible for safety. The plan identifies an adequately trained safety officer who reports directly to the general manager. The plan includes adequate methods to be actually executed, and that the plan has been approved by the WMATA Board of Directors. The WMATA Board approved this plan on October 28th. The plan's been signed by the accountable executive, the general manager. The WMSC oversees implementation of the PTAS through our regular oversight work, including inspections, audits, and investigation. Metrorail needs to implement the safety improvements committed to in the PTAS in a comprehensive and consistent way, which we understand may take some time. The WMSC will continue to oversee the implementation and continue to identify areas where Metrorail can and should get better. This concludes my remarks, except to say I would urge you to vote to approve Metro's revision to its PTASP.
Thank you, Dr. Meyer. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Dr. Meyer's report and update?
I have a question, Chair Hart.
Yes, Commissioner Lobby.
Mr. Meyer, is this the final approval for this plan, or does this plan also have to be approved by the Federal Transit Administration?
No, this is the final approval for the plan.
Okay, well, I think this has been a long time coming. I'm very happy to see this plan put in place. I just hope that Washington Metro will make this a living and breathing program, not just a paper tiger that sits on someone's shelf. And I think this may be the way to get to a better safety culture where some of these issues that we talk about every 6 weeks are addressed. So I'm very happy to see this plan put in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lobby. Are there any questions from any of the other commissioners for Dr. Meyer? Okay, seeing none, is there a motion to adopt Resolution 2021-12, which approves WMATA's PTAS revision?
So move.
Okay, Commissioner Hall moved. Thank you for that. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, second, Commissioner Bob. Thank you. I will now ask Council Brackett Smith to conduct our recorded vote.
Chair Hart,
Approve.
Commissioner Bob,
Approved.
Commissioner Farrar Dyke,
Approve.
Commissioner Hall,
Approve.
Commissioner Al-Khatib,
Approved.
Commissioner Lobby.
Approved.
Chair Hart, the motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Our second resolution today relates to our second independent financial audit. I would like to thank Secretary Treasurer Farrar Dyke for her role in this process, and I would like to thank our staff for their hard work, both on an everyday basis to ensure that we are meeting all requirements and as part of the audit process, in particular, to provide the necessary information and documentation. Secretary Treasurer Farrar Dyke, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Hart. We're very proud of our staff and our commissioners for this audit that includes an unmodified or clean opinion on the WMSC's financial statements through the end of our fiscal year last June, that the statements are fairly presented in conformance with generally accepted accounting principles. The auditors concluded that the financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the WMSC. This annual audit is required by WMSC's compact and upon adoption will be transmitted as required. The Finance and Operations Committee provided oversight of this independent work and recommends commission adoption.
Thank you, Secretary Treasurer Farrar Dyke. We're very proud to have another clean financial audit before us. Are there any questions from the commissioners for Secretary Treasurer Farrar Dyke? Okay, seeing none, is there a motion to adopt the fiscal year 2021 financial audit via resolution 2021-13?
So move.
So move, Commissioner Bob. Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Al-Khatib. Did I get that right that time?
Yes, you got it.
All right, I'm getting better at this. Thank you. I will now ask Council Brackett Smith to conduct our recorded vote.
Chair Hart,
Approve.
Commissioner Bob,
Approve.
Commissioner Farrar Dyke,
Approve.
Commissioner Hall,
Approve.
Commissioner Al-Khatib,
Approved.
Commissioner Lobby.
Approved.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Our third resolution relates to a time-critical change to the WMSC program standard pertaining to the receipt of WMATA temporary use notices by the WMSC. Section 2C of the program standard requires the CEO to explain to us why an interim change is needed. So I will turn it over now to Dr. Meyer to explain the need for the change and to give the commissioners a chance to ask any questions. Dr. Meyer.
Thank you again, Chair Hart. This change would amend a portion of section 10.A.2 of the WMSC program standard related to temporary use notices, or TUNs. Metrorail uses TUNs when they determine it is necessary to temporarily use a facility or system for purposes other than testing when it's not yet been certified for use. Such circumstances include, but are not limited to, the movement of a rail passenger car from one facility to another under its own power, or the use of a facility or system for training purposes. The current version of section 10.A.2 of the program standard contains a typographical error and potential language ambiguity that implies that the WMSC must take action with respect to TUNs when that is not actually the case. The new language will simply require WMATA to transmit TUNs to the WMSC at least 7 days in advance. At present, Metrorail has sent us TUNs as far as a week in advance, but as short as 12 hours in advance. So this change will fix the ambiguity and standardize the transmittal process.
Thank you, Dr. Meyer. Do any commissioners have any questions for Dr. Meyer regarding TUNs, regarding this part of the agenda? Just a minute, I'm having a little technical difficulty here. Does let me ask you, Dr. Meyer, does this imposition of a 7-day deadline, when you said some of them came only hours in advance, does that present any potential problems that we need to know about now?
It shouldn't present any compliance issues, if that's what you're asking, because Metro must make the decision well in advance as to whether or not a project is going to be placed in service by relying on a TUN. So this simply makes it clear there is a particular deadline to send us the TUN and any associated justification material.
Okay, thank you. So any questions from any other commissioners for Dr. Meyer? Thank you. Seeing none, is there a motion to adopt this time-critical revision to the WMSC program standard via resolution 2021-14?
So move.
So move, Commissioner Hall. Thank you for the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Okay, Commissioner Al-Khatib, second. I will now ask Council Brackett Smith to conduct a recorded vote.
Chair Hart,
Approve.
Commissioner Bob,
Approved.
Commissioner Farrar Dyke,
Approve.
Commissioner Hall,
Approve.
Commissioner Al-Khatib,
Approved.
Commissioner Lobby.
Approved.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. That completes our business for today. As a reminder, you can always report any concerns through our website, wmsc.gov, through our social media channels like Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, or by email. We expect to hold our next public meeting on January 25th, 2022. At this time, we expect this meeting will again be held remotely via video conference. We look forward to seeing you then. Before we go, I'd like to thank the members of the public who watched the meeting, who attended the meeting, Dr. Meyer and the WMSC staff for their hard work in general and for their preparation for this meeting, and to the commissioners and alternate commissioners for their engagement in this process. I would also like to join Mr. Sahu in observing appreciation to those who lost their lives in Pearl Harbor 80 years ago today. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Commissioner Laube, that's a good way to use your commissioner status. Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, second, Commissioner Al-Khatib, thank you. I will now ask Council Brackett Smith to conduct our recorded vote.
All right, Chair Hart,
Approve.
Commissioner Bob,
Approved.
Commissioner Farrar-Dyke,
Approve.
Commissioner Hall,
Approve.
Commissioner Al-Khatib,
Approve.
Commissioner Laube,
Approved.
okay, there we go. Chair Hart, the motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Smith, and Commissioner Laube, you get the last word. The meeting is hereby adjourned.